like to ask you, Graham, about your past and your career in music.
Right, yes. Well, of course, I come from a musical family. I always liked to write and I always loved literature. And I was surrounded by books. I was also surrounded by music. And there were musicians, coming to and from, to the house where my brother and I live. My brother's actually quite famous. He's calls himself Bernard Gregor Smith, and he's a cellist, and he was in the Lindsay string quartet, which was a really well-known string quartet, and they were for a long time at Sheffield University and Manchester University, and they were stationed in Sheffield, although of course they operated worldwide. So I come from a musical family, and I took up the violin at an early age, and played the violin a lot as a teenager, and I was in various youth orchestras, and I joined orchestras, the Halle Orchestra and the Scottish National, and then I thought that as I say in my biog, I thought my life, as a teenager, had been just a little bit too sheltered. I hadn't been quite wild enough, I hadn't rebelled enough successfully. I was a little bit too much of a good boy, so I thought I would join a rock and roll band, and that had the effect of shocking everyone, which was exactly what I wanted, And so I grew my hair of course that was a long time ago. I grew my hair long. I became, I changed the way I looked, and I joined a band called String Ribbon Thing in Scotland, which was signed up by Charisma Records. And we toured, did a lot of touring all over Europe and America. We toured a lot with Genesis at that time, then String Ribbon Thing broke up eventually, and I joined Van de Graaff Generator, which was really quite a famous band, and they had been already in existence and already famous when I joined them. And I was a couple of years with them, and a few more years after that working with Peter Hamill, and I did a lot of touring, especially in America and Europe. Yeah, well, actually Scandinavia as well. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then later on, you went to Iceland.
Yes, I went to live in Iceland. After a few years of rock and roll, my head was done in, so I decided to go to Iceland. Which is a daunting and wonderful country, actually, and the people are amazing. They're really, really interesting. Very, very strong, intelligent race, with a lot of a strong sense of spirituality,
really?
A strong sense of the earth, some very good musicians, writers and artists, and a most daunting and wonderful landscape, a land of ice and fire. And so I was there for 6 years. And when I came back to the UK, I freelanced as a musician, and then I got a job teaching at a school in Redland High School.
Yes.
For girls, and I was there for many years. And at the same time, I taught boys and girls privately in a private studio. After school. Yeah. So I did that for a number of years. That was the day job, And I continued doing rock and roll as well, and I always continued to do writing as well. And then I decided that I'd had enough of music, not to throw it away completely, but I, really made my contribution. And what I'd always wanted to do was to write novels, and I just suddenly one day had an inspiration, and I made the start. I actually wrote "Start Here."
Really?
Yeah. And I haven't stopped since.
Right.
Yeah.
So one day, this is the day I'm going to start writing.
Yeah, I made a decision. Someone said to me the most difficult thing, the first hurdle is actually starting. And so I started.
Mm.
Yeah.
And here we are,
Yes.
book produced, another one
Yeah.
on the way,
Yeah.
more in
Yeah.
the series.
Yeah.
So it's a good start.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I noticed that you said from an early age you were interested in writing, both writing and astronomy.
Yes.
Actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are certain things, that I think everyone really would identify with this, because I think there are certain things which are with us all through our lives. I mean, certain interests, and I always liked science. And although I've always been an arts, and like at school I was like an arts sixth former. I did music and literature and all of that stuff. I was always good at science at school. To begin with, and then I dropped to science and concentrated only on the arts. But I always liked science, and in science I always liked astronomy.